Nothing else has come even close. I mean, I have received literally hundreds of comments per month asking me about the 6.8 Western. I haven't really mentioned it much in these videos because I just didn't feel like I knew enough about it to really say. Well, I have invested a lot of hours pouring through reloading manuals, the technical specs of this cartridge, watching every video that's out there on YouTube to hear what others have to say, and purchasing a 6.8 Western. And this is in the Winchester XPR that I've also had a lot of requests for a review on, so that I can finally give you the real deal on the 6.8 Western. I have to mention right up front that this video is part of Cartridge Wars. And so in addition to just talking about 6.8 Western as a standalone cartridge, we're going to be comparing it to the 270 WSM, the 270 Winchester, and the 27 Nosler that you guys have voted into this part of the competition. In the last episode, we looked at 300 WSM versus 30-06, and by a narrow margin of 7%, you guys voted for the 300 WSM to continue in the competition. So here's where we are in the brackets right now. The reason you've heard so much hate about the 6.8 Western is because of some just frankly dishonest marketing that Browning and Winchester did for the 6.8 Western when it was announced. They put up this chart on their website that's still there, where they've chosen a very sleek bullet and a pretty hot load for the 6.8 Western and compared it to a 300 Win Mag and a 7 Mag with a much less sleek bullet to try to show that theirs was somehow more powerful. But let's see if it still has merit. So what we're going to do to get an apples to apples comparison here is actually just to look at the case water capacity for all of these cartridges. I think this is a better way to compare them apples to apples, because it just depends what bullet you put in each one of these to try to compare them fairly. So as you can see, the 27 Nosler is by far the hottest load that you can possibly get. If you're just looking for overbore, hot rod, as fast as you can go, you want the 27 Nosler. The WSM is just barely faster than the 6.8 Western, because the 6.8 Western pushed back the shoulder 80 thousandths. And the good old 270 Winchester lags quite a bit behind in case capacity. Even though it's a long action, it's a skinny little cartridge, and now everybody wants these short fat things. But what I don't want you to take from that is say, oh, 270 Winchester's not as good then, less case capacity. Well, if that's the case, then we should just neck down the 50 BMG to everything to get as much powder as possible. Obviously, there's a trade-off when you add more powder, recoil, and barrel life. But that doesn't take into account the types of bullets that some of these can shoot and others can't shoot. See, a 270 Winchester, you can shoot it up to about 150 grains on the bullet weight, but I've never really seen any loads more than 150 grains for a 270 Winchester. That's because of, one, the length of the cartridge already, but more importantly, the twist rate of the barrel is only one twist in 10 inches. Whereas the 6.8 Western, the 270 WSM, the 27 Nosler, they have faster twist rates. So now let's hop onto the computer and let's take a look at an average load for each one of these. So obviously these are all 270 cartridges. Yes, you can put in a 150 grain bullet for all of these, but again, that's why we looked at the case water capacity, to really just understand what's possible with each of them. But just because it's possible doesn't mean it's the best load for each cartridge. And so just in my opinion, this is a good look at the velocity and probably the best or most common load for each one of these cartridges. Let's look at energy at 200 yards. You'll see that really they're very comparable, except for that 270 Winchester if you're going to be shooting it in that 130 grain load. Now we're looking at trajectory and wind drift. There just isn't a huge difference except for that hot rod 27 Nosler. If you're willing to take the increase in recoil and the loss of barrel life, yeah, you can save a few inches of drop. Wind drift barely makes a difference anywhere except for the 270 Winchester. You're going to lose 1 inch at 300 yards. Now, maximum effective range. Really, for hunting, to keep the bullet above 1900 feet per second to expand and 1500 foot-pounds of energy to really pack a wallop here, I mean, this is going to exceed almost every hunter's capabilities for distance. Only if you're a true long-range hunter is this even relevant. The 270 Winchester with lighter recoil and better barrel life is perfectly capable of taking some pretty long shots. Let's talk 6.8 Western versus the 270 WSM. So the 270 WSM is the parent cartridge for the 6.8 Western. The 270 WSM was released, 15-ish years ago by Winchester, and now Winchester and Browning, the same company, is updating this. And so to think of the 6.8 Western as the 270 WSM version 2.0 is totally accurate. I think some people didn't understand that when the cartridge was released, because I heard a lot of complaints about, oh, this is just a repackaged 270 WSM, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's the same company. I think they have the right to update their cartridge, especially because the 270 WSM has a checkered history. The problem was, after it was released, they were faced with a lawsuit by somebody who had patented essentially the short, fat case. That patent has now expired, but it really slowed down the production of 270 WSM and the adoption by other companies. And we're shooting even longer range than we were 15 years ago, and so to me, it kind of makes a lot of sense to update this cartridge. Now, what was changed is actually very, very subtle. They basically just pushed the shoulder back 80 thousandths of an inch and trimmed the case that much. And I mean, there's a tiny, tiny, tiny difference in the taper. I mean, that's it. But there's one other significant change. They also updated the twist rate that's recommended for the barrels. Now, of course, you could take a 270 WSM and get a barrel that has a faster twist rate, but most people won't. They'll buy the factory offering. And so twist rate ends up being tied to the cartridge. Now, interestingly, Winchester is releasing their rifles with a 1-8 twist for the 6.8 Western, whereas Browning rifles is doing 1-7.5. You'll see later how that maybe doesn't matter that much. But the WSM was only a 1-10 twist. And so the WSM, you really didn't see loads over 160 grains in general for the WSM, and now the 6.8 Western goes to a 175 grain load. That's a nice update to the cartridge. Now, you do lose a tiny bit of case capacity by pushing that shoulder back. Not enough to really matter a lot. We're talking about a couple grains maybe, and only if you were shooting a full hot load, as hot as it goes. And so I think it's difficult to argue that the 270 WSM is just a better design than the 6.8 Western. I think for today's standards, almost everybody would agree the 6.8 Western is just a better design. It just annoys people that it's not unique enough to be a new cartridge in their minds. The other point is availability. I think 6.8 Western is going to take off. I mean, already, I just went to a store yesterday after getting the rifle. No problem finding 6.8 Western ammo. There was, dozens of boxes of it. And we've all seen that in the stores. And so availability probably beats the 270 WSM. And so in my mind, in this comparison, at least the 6.8 Western versus the first competitor, the 270 WSM, I really think that the 6.8 Western takes it. Better availability. It's just a better design for today. I think it probably takes it. Next round in the fight is the 6.8 Western versus the 27 Nosler. I'll just lay it out right here. I think the 27 Nosler is in trouble. I'm not sure that this cartridge is going to go the distance. Not because it isn't a good cartridge, I just don't know if it's what people are looking for right now. So the 27 Nosler is fast. You saw it has the highest case capacity of these 270 cartridges. They released it right during or before the pandemic, which was a tragic moment to be releasing a cartridge because all the ammo and rifle manufacturers, they're just pumping out everything they can of one thing. And so they haven't been interested in, making these new oddball cartridges. It's just like not possible to find 27 Nosler ammo. Rifles, the only one I know made is by Nosler itself. It just does not have much support at all. And so availability is next to nothing. There are also some other problems with it. One is barrel life. The formula that I created for barrel life puts barrel life on the 27 Nosler at around 1,100 shots. That's pretty low. And for the 6.8 Western is 1,900 shots. So barrel life advantage to the 6.8 Western. Also barrel length. When I look into the algorithm that I created for the recommended barrel length, 25.5 inches on the 27 Nosler compared to 23 on the 6.8 Western. That's a big advantage. I mean, this Winchester XPR that I bought for the 6.8 Western, it's so tiny and short. It's like perfect for being suppressed. I think barrel lengths are getting shorter and shorter right now, especially as more and more people are shooting a silencer. Twist rate is also slightly weaker on the 27 Nosler at 1 and 8.5 inches. Now, if I go to the Berger website, they have a really good calculator to understand bullet stability. And with a 175 grain projectile, it does barely still stabilize it in the comfortable category, but it's closer to that marginal, which is fine, I think, for right now. But who knows? I mean, we're only getting to longer and longer bullets. We don't know how future-proof that really is. Objectively, I mean, given that 6.8 Western has better support, and I would argue I would rather take its compromises compared to the compromises on the 27 Nosler, I again think in this round, you have to say the 6.8 Western, love it or hate it, it probably beats the 27 Nosler. I decided to sit by a calming fire for this one because I'm sure that some of you maybe are getting frustrated that I have favored the 6.8 Western on these first two cartridges that we put it up against. But now let's take a look at the 6.8 Western versus the 270 Weatherby Magnum. The 270 Weatherby Magnum was invented, way back, I think in 1940s, and it's been a very successful cartridge. Today, though, it seems to be really lacking support. In an ammunition crunch, Weatherby cartridge prices have hit the stratosphere. It's kind of rare that I see a box of any type of Weatherby ammo under $100 for 20 shots. That's absurd. That's always been a knock on, why invest in the Weatherby stuff? Because now you have one company that you're relying on for that ammunition. It doesn't seem real smart, and it seems to be proved out right now during this ammunition crunch. Plus, when you look at rifle support, the 6.8 Western is made by Winchester in the Model 70 and the XPR line, and it's made by Browning in several different rifles. It's fairly available. I mean, you can go on the auction sites and pick up a 6.8 Western rifle today for really not much more than you would pay in a store. I go into the gun stores very frequently, and I pretty often see 6.8 Western rifles dropping in, and they go quickly, but you can find them. And the ammo is extremely available. I just found dozens on the shelf yesterday. So you compare that to the 270 that is only in the Mark V line. Even Weatherby doesn't support it in the Vanguard line. Ammunition's hard to find for it. It's extremely expensive. Ballistically, it's a very old style of cartridge. If you own one, great. It's a good cartridge for sure, a good 270. But if you're buying one today, I think most of us would agree the 6.8 Western really beats it. The part where I'm not really sure myself, and this is where you guys are going to have to vote in Cartridge Wars, is between the 6.8 Western and the 270 Winchester. Which is the best all-around hunting cartridge? And also just shooting. So I'm going to walk through some of the differences, and this is where we're going to get to some of the cons on the 6.8 Western. But just a reminder, you guys vote who wins Cartridge Wars. And so I have linked in the description and the first pinned comment a link to a poll where you can vote on who wins this, and that's what's going to continue in our bracket system to see who wins. Last time I did it by just comments, and it took me hours and hours to read every single comment and tally up. And so this time we'll go off that poll. All right, let's talk about these two. Advantage first goes to 270 Winchester for magazine capacity. Although it is a long action cartridge, it's a much skinnier cartridge, and so you're probably going to get one extra shot in the magazine with most designs. The next advantage goes to the 6.8 Western for being a short action cartridge. By doing that, we save, maybe 3/10 of a pound of rifle weight. Also, both of these can shoot in a pretty short barrel length. Since there's not really a difference in barrel length between these two, you can actually save that weight. Sometimes, yeah, we're in a short action, but we need a longer barrel, and that's not the case here. So it's a real savings of about 3/10 of a pound. Next is twist rate. This is one that's often overlooked, how fast our rifling is in the barrel. For the 270 Winchester, it's 1 in 10 compared to for the 6.8 Western, and this is frustrating, Winchester rifles do a 1 in 8 twist, Browning rifles do a 1 in 7.5 twist. I really wish, could we not come together, people? Either way, if we look at that bullet stability for the twist rate on the Berger website, we see the 270 Winchester is really going to tap out around 150 grains, where you just can't put a heavier bullet in there, or we may not stabilize it. Whereas the 6.8 Western can go to 175, and if somebody makes a heavier bullet, it could handle that. It's really future-proofed. It's very, very stable, even for these very long bullets that we're using today. Now, ballistics, this one, yeah, you give a point to the 6.8 Western because yes, it's more flat shooting. Yes, it hits with more power. The case just has more capacity. You can put more powder in that thing. But we also have to give points to the 270 because it has less recoil. The barrel life is longer. But when I really compare the barrel life, even with the 6.8 Western, we're getting about 1,900 shots on a barrel, and the 270's, higher than that, maybe around 2,500. But either way, I would consider both of those to just be very good barrel life. Most people are never going to shoot the barrel out. It's between the benefit of, fast shooting and the drawback of fast shooting, and you just need to decide which side you want to be on, where your balance really is. For me personally, I would take more power. If I'm going elk hunting, for example, I do feel a little undergunned with the 270 Winchester. Now, 270 Winchester is definitely an elk gun. A ton of people successfully hunt elk with 270 Winchester for years. Definitely an elk gun. But the way I think of it is, if I can handle the recoil just fine, I can shoot just as accurately, then I might as well shoot with more power. I stand that much more chance of anchoring the animal and giving it an ethical death, and of recovering the animal. So if I can take the more power without it really impacting my accuracy, then I'm going to do that. And to me, 6.8 Western is, the numbers for recoil are still well within the comfort zone for most adult male shooters, and a lot of women as well. Then availability. I again find lots of 6.8 Western ammunition on shelves. You can find the rifles, but they're a little bit tougher. But 270 is absolutely everywhere. This is maybe the biggest problem I have with the 6.8 Western right now, is that it's Winchester and Browning that have teamed up. Now, I don't mean to be too critical. I've owned a number of Browning rifles. I now own a Winchester, and they both make good rifles. However, they maybe wouldn't be my very first pick, and we'll see if the other manufacturers really catch on. Really ever, but soon. And so that is a big knock on the 6.8 Western, is you can't just go pick any old rifle you want and expect it to have a chambering. But the future of 6.8 Western looks really, really good. And so honestly, I don't know which one should continue in the contest. The 6.8 Western, the new hotness, that, I mean, there's no way that if the 270 Winchester were designed today and somebody came out with this, there's no way anybody would argue, oh, that's better than the 6.8 Western, if they were both being released today. But that's not the case. This one just has a lot more support, that 270 Winchester, and a long track record. But if you were designing one today, it would be the 6.8 Western. Who wins? You decide. Vote in the poll below, and we'll see you in the next video.